All right, let's start this one on a dusty roadside, somewhere off Route 9. We're gonna unravel a little mystery, one that involves some seriously obsolete technology, a very unique kind of person, and, believe it or not, a whole bunch of quarters. So picture this. I'm holding this thing. It's an old payphone coin return tray. I mean, for anyone under 25, this is basically a fossil, right? A dinosaur bone. But I didn't find it in some museum. Nope. I found it tucked behind a payphone that still had a dial tone. But here's where it gets really strange. The tray wasn't empty. It had these fresh, shiny quarters just sitting there, which, it raises a big question. Who is feeding money to a payphone in this day and age, and why? Honestly, this felt impossible. It was like finding a rotary phone that could somehow get on TikTok. It just didn't make sense, and it sent me right down a rabbit hole trying to find out who was responsible for it. So that's what this is really about. It's the story of that person, a glorious, wonderful weirdo who is single-handedly keeping this little piece of the past alive. Oh, and you're going to want to stick around, because there is a fantastic twist at the end involving a laundromat that just changes everything. But before we can meet him, we have to take a quick trip back in time. For some of us, this is just a little refresher, right? For others, well, this is a history lesson on what a payphone actually was. See, a payphone was so much more than just a phone in a box. It was a lifeline. It was this small metal promise that no matter how lost or stranded you were, you could always reach out and talk to someone. It was a fundamental piece of our world. And how they worked was just beautiful in its simplicity. You'd drop your coins in, you'd dial the number, and the machine would decide whether to eat your coins or spit them back out. Of course, there was always option number 5. Yes, come on, we all did it. We all got our PhD in percussive maintenance by slamming that receiver down just right to trick the machine into giving us our money back. And then there was the ultimate hack, the collect call. You'd get the operator to ask for your name, and you would just yell your entire message into that one little free snippet of audio. You have a call from Bob, we're at the movies. It was a rite of passage. I mean, think about it. It was primitive, it was elegant, and yeah, probably a little bit illegal. This was America's very first voice note feature. Long before we had apps, we had this beautiful, frantic loophole. Then, of course, cell phones showed up, and poof, payphones just vanished. Well, most of them, but not all of them. And that brings us to our guy, the man who owns the very phone that started this whole journey. Let's call him Marvin, the Payphone King. And Marvin is exactly who you'd hope he'd be. He pulls up in a car that looks like it delivered newspapers in the 1940s. He's got this massive keyring that sounds like a wind chime, a beat-up canvas bag, and he even gives the phone a little pat, like it's an old friend. So naturally, I had to ask him, do people still actually use this thing? And his answer, oh man, his answer told me everything. He just looked at me, kind of smiled, and said, not people, characters. And that's when I knew this was going to be a good story. He gets almost poetic about it. To him, the payphone is this silent, reliable servant. It doesn't need to update, it doesn't track your data, and it absolutely doesn't judge you. It just sits there waiting for you, especially on your worst days. For a second, he sounds like this beautiful, antique philosopher. And then, just as you're getting swept up in all that poetry, he brings it right back down to earth. He just shrugs and adds, also, I like quarters. And that, right there, that's him in a nutshell. Part romantic, part complete pragmatist. Okay, so let's circle back to the central mystery, those fresh quarters I found just sitting in the coin return. I asked him about them, and let me tell you, the answer was not at all what I was expecting. He calls it his good luck tax. Apparently, this local rumor got started that this specific payphone is lucky. So now people leave a quarter in the tray for a little bit of good fortune. It's become a tiny roadside wishing well. So at this point, I'm doing the math in my head. He's not making much money from actual calls. The good luck money can't be a fortune. So the real question is, why? Why on earth go through all this trouble to maintain one lonely, forgotten payphone? And here it is. Here's the big twist. The whole time, I thought his business was the phone itself, that his goal was the small profit from the calls. But the reality was completely different. The phone wasn't the business at all. Marvin just points across the street to a laundromat. He owns that too. The payphone isn't the business, it's the mascot. It's a landmark, a conversation starter. It's an advertisement that gets people to stop, take a picture, and maybe wander over into his actual business. So, let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture here. Because this story isn't really about one quirky guy and his old phone. It's about how we decide what has value. Here's the main takeaway. Yeah, technology becomes obsolete, sure. But when something old and forgotten manages to stick around long enough, it stops being junk and it starts being a story. It becomes fascinating precisely because it shouldn't be there anymore.
And that was Marvin's quiet genius. He understood that the phone's true value wasn't in the quarters it collected from the occasional call. No, its real value was in being memorable. And in a world that is just screaming for our attention, being memorable is an incredibly powerful currency.
And that kind of leaves us with one final